All right. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm going to give everybody a couple more minutes to join in.
Hi, Ron.
All right, we're just giving people a couple more minutes to join in. Les, did we have anybody say that they weren't going to be able to join today?
I think it was just Stephanie
Okay.
and yeah, I think just Stephanie.
Okay, so we're waiting on Mary.
Oh, she's here.
Mary's here. Okay. Oh, there she is. Okay. Okay. So I think we have everybody, right, Les?
Yes, I think so. There's 13 minus 2. My bill on myself is 11 and 12. So yeah, Stephanie's not coming, so 11.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everybody. It's 1:05 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'll just go ahead and do roll call. We do have quorum. So we have Mio Naunathone chair here today. We have Maka'ala Kaumoana, Robin K, Roy Abe, Tessie Kinnaman, Keith Kawaoka, Ron Terry, Rob Parsons, Mary Berger, Mike Tulang, and Mahina Tudor. Also with us is Bill Cooper from the AG's office, and from OEQC we have Les Segundo. Okay. Did I miss anybody? Looks like we do not have any members of the public joining us. All right. Thanks, everybody. Welcome to our October meeting. First up on the agenda, review and approval of prior meeting minutes. Les, nothing yet. Okay. Continuing to work on those. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. So, Keith, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you for the OEQC Director's Report.
Okay, thank you, Anona. Good afternoon, everybody. I don't have a whole lot to report from last month's. I know the departments are preparing their budgets for submittal for next legislative sessions. I think I mentioned about the possible scenarios of budget cuts anywhere between 10 to 20%. And I think even the governor has brought up the possibility of furloughs, possibly at the end of the year, That's not for sure yet. But all in all, it's a matter of general funds getting very, very scarce here overall, primarily because of the effects of COVID-19. So that's what the department, at least DOH, is going through right now, is going through the various budget exercises, the submittals. We're going through the admin bills that we're going to propose in the governor's package. So I would imagine between now and before the year is out, we'll have a budget submittal, depending on what scenario we're going to go in with at this point. So that's all I've got. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions? I saw ask one in the meantime. You know, I believe governor's current order expires at the end of this month. Has there been any indication that the portion of the order that will allow, you know, these electronic meetings, will that be continued basically through the end of the year or whatnot, even if, you know, Oahu opens up and the other islands open up?
Nothing specific yet. I mean, what you've been hearing in the media regarding the travel opening up mid-October, I know various counties have expressed some concern about that. Either they would not want to join into that 72-hour testing programs. I know several counties have voiced their desire to actually add in a second testing when they arrive, somewhere when they arrive or a few days afterwards. So it's, I'll be honest, it's a confusing matter, I think, when you get down to the county level of what they want to do. And I think the Kauai in particular did provide a proposal to add a second testing, and the governor denied that request. So at this point, you know, and we're what, less than 10 days away from that opening. Whether they'll happen or not, it's anybody's guess. So I would imagine there'll be another proclamation to extend the current one. What things will be added to it, what things will be taken away, I have no idea.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I think from my perspective, at least, you know, for this board, I know people probably have concerns still with traveling, even if it does open up. So, you know, to the extent we can encourage Gov to at least let, you know, the Chapter 92 meetings continue via Zoom, I think that would be good just for, you know, conducting business. And I imagine it helps the budget a little bit with not having to account for travel. So that's just my vote if that comes up in discussions.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable scenario at this point. You know, just expect to continue on at least into next year sometime.
That seems reasonable, Keith. That would be my concern as well. Those of us like me of age, traveling and exposure is not a good thing. We are all on lockdown over here, preparing for the opening of the floodgates. And we're taking it very seriously because the few tourists we have already are skipping quarantine when they can. They're getting caught and they don't care, paying fines and they don't care. So we have no evidence on Kauai that this is going to work, and we have no other protection until there's a, you know, an acceptable vaccine and other So what I would ask is even after we meet in person, that if we're not able to get, you know, viral protection, that you at least offer some of our members partial video meeting attendance at any rate.
Thanks, Maka'ala. Yeah, I think we're all kind of in that same boat where we're hoping this continues, at least this portion, you know, whatever happens with the other portions of the proclamation, that at least there's this option to continue virtually. So, okay, thanks very much, Keith, for your update. Appreciate it. And good luck to you. And I know you folks are dealing with a lot at DOH, so thank you for taking care of that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Ron now to give the exemption committee update. Okay, Ron, you're on mute.
I hate it when people do that. Hey guys, yeah, I just needed to get my agenda up. So we had an exemption committee meeting today. It was a full meeting, very productive. Probably the most important thing to say is that there's an action item on the agenda for the council to deal with, the DLNR list, some slight formatting changes, the reorganization. We are not going to advance that today. In discussion with DLNR, we identified some issues more substantive than reorganization. And so these are things that were already in their list that we already concurred with, but we decided to give it a second look. And some of this is based on events that have passed in the last few months, and everybody on the committee felt that it was appropriate for DLNR to go back and give this another thought. Emma Ewan from DLNR was at the meeting, and we asked her if she felt comfortable making some changes to the list on the fly to change something from de minimis to not de minimis to exemption notice worthy. And she said, nah, not really. I think I need to talk to my people yet. So she's going to come back to us and with a perhaps changed list, or, you know, and take it or leave it message or something like that. We'll see when she comes back, but hopefully they'll have a thoughtful dialogue, and this will be on your agenda next time. We also went over a number of the agencies that have come to us, and they're at various stages of reorganizing their lists. As you guys remember last time, you passed out the design and construction department, Honolulu Department of Design Construction. They are now on the web with their reorganized list. Les and Tom took care of that. Department of City and County Honolulu Land Management, they're in a comment period. They were published for comment on September 23rd. If you want to comment on their list, please feel free. We're going to collect all the comments at the end of October and put them along with the list on the agenda for consideration for concurrence if appropriate. So you may be seeing them again. There were several other agencies that are in different states. I won't mention much about them, but you may be seeing them also at the next meeting. I guess the point is that agencies are out there reorganizing their lists. We need more of them to do so. So we have a full slate of reorganized lists. So if you folks have contact with agency people that are in a position to do it, please remind them that their lists need to be reorganized. We sent them a letter in September, all the agencies, and we think it's stimulated some business, but we think there's a lot more that can be done. We also discussed the issue of countywide lists. By implication, statewide lists. We didn't say that, but for one county to have one list, Maui County does that now. And I've heard from people, the agency people there, that they feel it works pretty well. Our committee is going to be looking at that in a little more depth and seeing whether we should encourage other counties to do it, try to see how it's working, what are the pros and cons, and we may be discussing that with you folks, the council as a whole, because I think it's definitely an item for everyone to consider in the future. And finally, we had a discussion of the judiciary as a special case. Judiciary is a branch of government that is not subject to Chapter 343, which applies to executive agencies only. Departments, specifically departments and offices and commissions and some other forms of executive agency. Neither the legislature nor the judiciary are subject to Chapter 343. Normally, it wouldn't matter much, because if the legislature sticks to making laws and the judiciary sticks to doing court cases, then there's little that enters their realm that enters Chapter 343. But judiciary has decided to take on some projects, apparently. Normally, DAGS, the Department of Accounting and General Services, manages all their projects. For example, if they need to build a new courthouse or get capital improvements for repair and maintenance or things like that, it's all through DAGS. But apparently judiciary is finding that the process is a little slow. They're finding lapsed funds, and they've wanted to do some project management on their own. And they're wondering, you know, how that works since they're not subject to 343. Can they, it sounds like they're sort of trying to voluntarily subject themselves to 343 so that, you know, they get the proper vetting of their environmental, anything that could have environmental impacts. And, you know, they've come to us, to Bill Cooper and to Les and to me, specifically because there was an question about exemptions. And our committee is wrestling with the idea of how it applies, how this special case applies. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that. And I might refer some of the questions to Bill and Onauna and Les, or you know, we can just report on this later.
Yeah, hi, Ron. This is Bill. In that regard, I've already communicated with Ms. Ina Fuka. She hasn't gotten back to me yet, but we're hopefully going to get some kind of response back as to what kind of projects they are actually anticipating taking over. And, you know, we can see where we go from there. But what had been brought out by Anona in our meeting was rather accurate, and they would probably be more of an applicant than, say, a approving agency or a receiving agency. So, well, anyway, it's an interesting theoretical endeavor, and in that regard too, I was thinking maybe we can invite Ms. Inafuka to the next meeting that we have, and she might be able to be a little bit more responsive to your questions if we're going to set this up for next month.
Well, yeah, for the exemptions committee, certainly I can say we'd welcome to have her there. Onauna can speak for the whole council, and I think, Onauna, do you want to say anything about your idea of perhaps a need for a legislative solution to this?
Yeah, sure. Well, before I go to that, if I can just, you know, kind of going back to the way that you described it, I mean, if the judiciary is truly exempt from 343, that's one thing. I think we need to explore that a little bit more, Bill. Maybe we can find, I don't know if there's legislative history in 343 that just outright exempts the judiciary, but you know, the way we're looking at the definitions earlier, it kind of goes both ways, right? I mean, the judiciary is absolutely not an agency under the definition. So for purposes of a exemption list, you know, that's where we're getting to that kind of funky area. So maybe we look at that, but because of that, and for those of you who don't have the background, you know, Ron gave a really good background. Just if you do get a chance to take a look at the definitions, you know, when we look at it, the judiciary is not an agency, and therefore, you know, if they were taking on work that triggered 343, if they're not truly exempt, would they then be an applicant, which might not have been legislative intent. So, you know, in the last several months, we have had other issues kind of come up with the council that I think internally we've discussed. We probably want to present to the legislators and say, hey, we think there are some fixes with 343 that might need to be done. As you folks recall, we met with Senator Gabbard and Representative Lowen in January of this year. And based on the comments we got on rulemaking, we didn't think there was anything really pressing that needed to be done with Chapter 343. And like I said, you know, over the last several months, we've had some stuff come up, particularly with our procedural rules and you know, the appeals that we might want to go ahead and revisit on a 343 level. And this issue here might be another one for the judiciary. Maybe, you know, the fix is that there needs to be a change to either the definitions of agency or an explicit cutout that allows for the judiciary to have an exemption list if it were to take on projects. So that's something that we want to have more of a discussion on in the exemption committee. And when the discussion is, kind of vetted a little bit more, we'll certainly bring it to the full council.
Yeah, and not only an exemption list, but also the ability to act as a proposing and approving agency.
Right, correct.
So that was it for my report. If there's any questions, I'll take them, or if not, that's it.
Thanks, Ron. Any questions? Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I have a question. Great report, Ron. You mentioned that you mailed out agency letters beginning of September in hopes to generate some business. Wondering approximately how many you mailed out and what's been your percentage of response?
Yeah, Les, do we have that exact number? It's
About
60, 70?
Yeah, about mid 60s, I guess 63, 64 letters went out.
And, in terms of responses, nobody's written us back and said, God, I've just been dying to hear from you. And
No.
Thank you so much for writing. But we have received some agency lists. And I'm thinking that those were done in response to our letter. So we've gotten about, I think 7 now, in some form or another, and with hints that we may be getting a few more. So, not a great batting average, I'd say, but, at least we're getting some nibbles.
How did you handle Maui County, which, as you said, has a comprehensive list? Did one
Well,
letter to Maui County or to more agencies than that, or?
Les, do you remember?
No, it went to each individual department in the county. That's how, even though they do have one list, we basically addressed the letter to the executive in charge of that agency. Like
Okay, got it.
Public Works Department or to the Water Department, yeah.
So probably, I can think maybe where you're leading, Rob, it might be more productive for us to engage with whoever in Maui County is really into, making sure their exemptions work. I imagine there's kind of a centralized somebody in there. Maybe it was you before.
No, that wasn't a role that I served, but I would note that there's a charter question on the upcoming November ballot that would establish a city manager, county manager style of government. And it's my sense that they would have that sort of role of disseminating information to all the departments, so that we wouldn't have to send 14 or 16 letters, something like that. So just, as we move forward, and as you said, as you're considering the discussion, I think it'll be an interesting discussion to have.
Yeah, I would like to, to engage, every agency as much as I can. Sometimes people will call me up and ask me questions, more general. They're thinking about doing it. But I'd like any and all of you who feel that, you have enough background on the subject to, go ahead and start that discussion with people. Because as we were mentioning in the committee, I really think that as I've been working with some departments, I find that this is the one time when they're doing their exemption list, the one time the whole department engages in the question of environmental impact, because they have to think about it in a specific way related to what they do. And there's an amazing dialogue that takes place among the department members that, we just, our government is so siloed that we don't usually get that conversation going.
I would add that this discussion has also surfaced in the annual report committee, just the whole idea of lack of statewide broad environmental goals. And as a result, things have tended to get siloed. So it's, maybe moving forward in our next calendar year, we can agendize a broader discussion that would encompass these things. So anyway, thanks for your report, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Ron? No? All right, thanks again, Ron, for that update. All right, Rob, I'm gonna hand it over to you for an update on the annual report committee.
Thank you. The annual report committee met today, and we also met September 15th. So we've met twice since the last full council meeting. To refresh people's memory on what we shared last time, I think what's important is that we recognized, well, let me take one step back and thank Les very much for sharing the printed copy of the 2019 report with all the members. I've heard nothing but positive feedback, despite all the somersaults and cartwheels that we turned to get it finalized and to print and back. I'm happy with the way it turned out, and I think that we can collectively pat each other on the back virtually and just say, well done. So no rest for the 2020 report, which statutorily is due January 31st. So we are now looking at a little less than 4 months' time. I think it's doable. Our committee has cautioned us that given the restraints of time, staff, and money, none of that's gotten any better. In fact, it's gotten a little bit worse, that we really need to simplify in order to have some measure of success possible in meeting that deadline. I do think it's doable. Our committee has already put together some good structure, and what we feel might be productive is a SurveyMonkey style that could go out, depending on the outcome of today's meeting, could go out as early as this month or certainly next month to a bunch of agencies. And we anticipate doing more than the 6 state agencies we contacted for the 2019 report. We want to dial it down to the county level as well. Tessie, one of our committee members, sent a list of proposed agencies for Kauai County that looked great. She had the specific point persons and the emails included, so it will really help us move forward. And another thing to note is that Robin solicited help from one of his colleagues on Lanai, who is a pollster specialist, has established a business, is kind of a SurveyMonkey expert. And she has offered to provide pro bono support in helping us towards our goal in 2 areas. One would be in formatting the questions, because it's something she's very, very familiar with, and the rest of us are probably less familiar with. And secondly, in tabulating the results. And we noted that even after we interviewed and got agency responses for the 2019 report, it still took us a sufficient amount of time to dial those down into something digestible, and then take each of those digestible things and make sense out of it. So that definitely took a chunk of time, even after we had the interviews and input from the agencies. So I'm excited, and thank you, Robin, for reaching out. We double checked with Bill. He felt that it would be workable to have myself and Robin as 2 committee members only working with her. There are a list of questions that we tossed around in our committee meeting, and we can further digest them here with the full council. I can tell you what the committee's feedback was to the questions as background, and then I will invite any of you who have had a chance to look at them to share your feedback as well. Again, Robin cautioned that we don't want to go too deep, or we're just going to set ourselves up for not being able to make a deadline here. So there are 3 sets of questions on the hot link that's in the agenda. And the last set of questions is the ones that we're leaning towards. And there are 3 or 4 questions pertaining to COVID. And then there's a more general question about how the Environmental Council might be able to support an agency's environmental goals. We all acknowledge that the first 2 sets of questions had some really valuable questions as well. But there's 2 ways we're looking at it. One is, Roy suggested, well, we could have 2 sets of questions, 1 COVID related and 1 more general, and maybe 5 questions each. I don't think until we talk with our SurveyMonkey specialist who will be helping us that we'll really know what's the digestible amount for agencies to respond to. My feeling is that if we send them too much, we're less likely to get a response. So I think we're going to lean on her advice as far as distilling and tapering our questions down to something that is digestible. And then another approach that we discussed would be having the COVID questions that are at the last set of questions there, and then compiling some of the overriding concerns in the top 2 sets of questions in a draft multiple choice question. And I attempted to do that. And I want to read you what I came up with. It's all derived from things that were already on that list. So I'm not really adding anything new here. I just compiled it differently. So the question would be something like this. Rank the following issues in order of the most or least importance in your agency's ability in meeting its environmental goals. And there are 5 things that they would rank from, most to least importance. First, the absence of a comprehensive statewide environmental master plan and agencies thus working in their own silos. 2, overcoming permitting hurdles and public opposition creating delays. 3, overall carrying capacity issues not being fully addressed, leading to inequities in funding priorities. 4, insufficient clear goals in addressing current and future impacts of climate change. And lastly, COVID-19 short and long-term impacts creating widespread uncertainty in setting priorities. And so this would be a question that's asking them to rank those in the order that they think are really important. And they all have some importance, but it might elicit a response that's valuable for us to tabulate. Let me see if there's anything else in my notes. I think that pretty much encompasses what we covered in our committee meeting, and I welcome my committee members to add anything else that they like at this time.
I would just add that I know it's frustrating to switch the annual report to 5 or 6 questions, but it was also frustrating to do the annual report the way we did it this year, and frustrating the way we did it the year before. And I think our goal this year should be to make it as simple as possible while fulfilling our statutory responsibility. And in that context, that's why we came up with the SurveyMonkey questions focused on COVID. I realize, Roy's asked some really good questions. Tessie had added a bunch. And I think, Rob, you did a great job in collecting that for the final question, if you will. But we really wanted to make this something we could do without putting more pressure on Keith or on Anna, without having any money. And the fact that it would be absolutely phenomenal if we could have this done by January 1st. And so from a very practical perspective, that's why we're coming up with this recommendation the way Rob outlined it. It's not to shirk our responsibility, it's actually to fulfill it in the context of the challenges we face today. A lot of the questions that Roy, for example, framed, I particularly think would be invaluable as part of what we talked about doing next year, which is having a strategic planning conversation for what's the EC all about. And so one of the last questions in this list would be soliciting some input on what the agencies see as our role. And then we could incorporate Roy's good questions into that conversation after January. So that's, I think, where we are.
Great input, Robin. And Chair, I would, if you'd like to just guide a general discussion on formulating the questions and moving forward, given the information that we've given now, or just open to questions from the full council. We'd welcome that.
Absolutely. Does the council have any questions? Please go for it. And
I guess I'll start. This is a lot of work. Wow. I'm so pleased. I'm so happy that we didn't just fold our tent. I love the idea of a survey, and thank you, Robin, for providing a little bit more sophisticated approach to SurveyMonkey. I particularly appreciate focusing on what the impacts of COVID have been, because personally here with our government, both state and county folks, it has been a mixed bag for them and for the public. And to the extent that COVID layered another emergency on top of two existing ones that we had here, the opportunity for public input and participation in our environmental decisions is a trickle compared to what it was prior to March 18. So for us, at least for me, maintaining connections with those people has been challenging, and mostly by phone. To not be able to do community process in a big group has definitely impacted agency effectiveness and agency plans. I know that, and I participate on a couple of fairly large meeting formats on Zoom, and they are better than nothing, but only a little. So it'll be very interesting for me. This is going to be very, very informative, and I hope the format that you folks have worked on and laid out, it seems like it will address the issue of what did we learn during these times? What did we learn that can make our processes better in the future? Because some good stuff's coming out of this. Some junk is too, but so thank you. I'm very impressed, and I absolutely welcome simple. There's just too much going on right now for anybody to need a whole lot of detail, and nobody has time to really do a ton of it anyway. I'm cognizant that does go on at the counties and the state agencies, and they're trying really hard, but the community will benefit from knowing how they have functioned and how they are adjusting and adapting. I have already taken the 2 hard copies that I have of the 2019 report and put them down in my office. They are gorgeous, and it makes me so proud. So thank you for that. I'm assuming you all know the front picture is K and fully within the Ha'ena Community-Based Subsistence Fishing Area. and within the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary. So partnerships are kind of what's happening right now for us over here. And thank you for the format. I love the idea.
I agree with Maka'ala, and thank you folks for your efforts to simplify it. And yeah, we bit off a little bit more than we could chew last year. So you know, this year, I again, I appreciate the efforts. And also, yes, I got my copy of this year's report. It looks great. So thank you to everybody who worked on that and made that possible. Do you have any other comments or ideas from this group for the annual report committee? Okay. You know, Rob, you did mention one thing, and I was trying to check the agenda about the strategic planning. I thought I had put an item on this agenda, which I neglected to, so I apologize for that. But for November, I will put that on there. We actually we had a lot of stuff to talk about today, and we have, you know, a separate meeting for certain folks after this. So I think November would be a better time. We can all kind of, you know, ruminate for the next 30 days and kind of think about what we would like to see in a strategic planning session for this group. But just, I apologize to the group that I didn't get it on today's agenda. Okay, anything else for our annual report committee?
Just a quick thought about what you just said, Onana. I was just thinking, having been a consultant who did this for a living, and given the fact that the Environmental Council has saved so much money by not transporting Maka'ala and Tessie and Ron and all the rest of us, could we use some of those unspent funds to have somebody help us through the strategic planning process?
That's a really good thought, Robin. I will punt that question to Keith. If that's, you know, if that's something that we could do, I think that would be helpful. Maybe not having somebody at the November meeting. I think November would be for us internally to decide, you know, ideas and what we think strategic planning would maybe look like. But,
yeah, I was thinking really just of a facilitator once we decided what we wanted to do.
Sure.
I think it's often helpful to have an outsider as the facilitator. We wouldn't be asking them to write the strategic plan or anything like that, to just facilitate the meetings for us if Keith thinks we can use the money for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good idea. Keith, I'll turn it over to you, and if you need some time to kind of look at budget or think about it, you know, let us know as well.
Yeah, I think offhand, based on last year's legislative session, a lot of the money has been swept. For example, like the vacancies, right? The vacancies that we have for the director and the planner were swept. We have to see what happens this session with the rest of the operating budget. And right now we don't know. You know, I told you about the various percentage reductions, and it could be higher. We don't know at this point, but we just looked at what it took to maintain office operations. Travel was certainly a big amount. And if any of those scenarios did come about, like travel, that was probably the first item to go. So it's not as if, because you're not traveling, the money is there. The money has been swept, basically, or reduced based on that expense.
Thank you, Keith. That makes sense.
Hey, Robin, do you know about a ballpark of how much it would cost for a facilitator for this type of thing?
I don't know. I haven't used any in Hawaii. I just know what I would have charged in Pittsburgh. So I don't know, maybe somebody else has experienced that. Mary's raising her hand.
I've participated in a number of groups. It can range anywhere from $1,500 to $20,000, depending on how extensive you want to get, how much, you know, how many forums or breakouts or whatever you do. There's a couple of people on Oahu that we could possibly, that I would happily approach and see if they would do it pro bono. Just because they would care.
That'd be wonderful. If you don't mind Well, so maybe, do we want to hold on even reaching out, you folks think, until we can talk more in November? Because we can have a structure.
We don't even know when or what we're talking about, yeah.
Right, right. Mhm.
I think once we get a sense of what the questions are or that we want to address in a plan, then we can figure out who, if we need help, and if so, what kind of help do we need? I think Mary's exactly right there. I'm sure there'll be some people who'd help us for just the experience of it. And it might simply be just to facilitate 2 meetings, and then we would do it from there. I mean, who knows? But I think you're right, Onana. We should hesitate until we have talked about it.
Okay. Thanks, folks. I think these are great ideas. And again, apologies, I didn't get that on today's agenda. It will be on the November agenda. At least now we all have kind of just a basic idea, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of come up with things that would help us form, at least somewhat of a scope of work if we were to go ahead and reach out to facilitators that are hopefully willing to do it pro bono. So great suggestions, everyone. Okay, so I'm gonna, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we strayed a little bit from the agenda, which is fine. I think we all understand that that's an important topic for us in the future here to wrap our arms around. I want to wrap up the annual report committee update with 2 things. One is I did see an email come through, I think from Les, or Les or Keith or both, and I think you got it too, Onana, that appears that a budget request will be made in the same amount to support the annual report as it was this year, which was $15,000, and I'm really happy that may be going forward, especially after hearing all the positive feedback of how our consultant and printer helped really make what we did this year pop, and just the images and format, and I couldn't be more happy. So if we had that kind of support again for the 2020 report, people are going to start to take notice that we were putting forth a quality product. And finally, this is an action item that we can recommend questions, and I'd like to, I move that the council support having 2 members of the annual report committee, myself and Robin, work with a pro bono consultant to formulate questions derived from the list that we have discussed today, so that we may prepare draft questions for our SurveyMonkey to go out to agencies.
Do we have a second? Okay, I saw Robin's hand first, so I'll give Robin the second. All right, is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll go ahead and
Yeah, I think it provides us the ability to move forward and not wait for a full council vote on things. And I think there's been good discussion and good input, and I think that Robin and I can carry it forward and put it in the format that's really going to help us out.
Great, thanks, Rob. All right, any other discussion? All right, folks, I'll go ahead and call the question. Motion on the floor is that the council supports having 2 members of the annual report committee, Rob and Robin, work with a pro bono consultant to formulate questions derived from the list that we discussed today to prepare the survey that would go out to the agencies. All right, all those in favor, say aye, and raise your hands. Okay, do we have any opposed? Okay, I see none. All right, it passes unanimously. All right, thank you. All right, thanks so much. So that wraps it up for annual report committee, Rob. All right. All right, so I know INO didn't meet today. I wanted to go ahead and just leave an agenda item in case anything came up. Anything from INO?
Not from me, thank you, Onana.
Okay, thank you. And the same for our legislative committee. I left an agenda item just in case. Anything from you, Robin?
No, we all are just, I mean, over here, we're just watching to see I hate to say this, but the games that are being played between the governor and the mayors, which is driving us crazy because we don't know what's going to happen. And so, yeah, it's legislative, but it's not germane to our agenda. It's just an off the top. Sorry.
It's okay. Thanks, Robin.
It's
I'm
very, very frustrating.
Yeah, I'm sure many share those sentiments on both the local level and the national level. So, well, maybe we can do that for the public forum. I'll just move on. Our next meeting is Tuesday, November 10th, 1 o'clock. We will have an exemption committee meeting right now. Annual report, you'll be meeting as well as my guests. Okay, and then INO meeting, no meeting for November. You can think about it too, but since we have it.
At this point, I'd like to say yes.
Okay. And legislative?
No.
No. Okay. And again, folks, those could change, but since we have everybody here, at least to give a heads up for the ones that are planning to meet. November 10th is the second Tuesday of the month. November 3rd is election day, so I'm sure we'll all be taking care of that. Mail-in ballots, I think, should be coming in real soon for most folks. Okay, I mean,
I'm sorry, our next meeting is not on the 1st? It's not the 1st?
it's not, yeah, we moved it to the 10th because of election day. So, which I think we actually typically do most Novembers.
Yeah, I already had it there. Okay, crisis averted.
Okay, great. Yep, so November 10th. And then, you know, we do have a public forum item if there is anything else that you folks want to talk about. And before we do that, I do want to remind, you know, we do have a separate Chapter 91 meeting following this. The listed time was 2:15, but whatever time we adjourn this meeting, we will immediately go into the other meeting. So please make sure to join via that link. Okay, Roy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, should we include on the agenda like finding new members? I guess we have 3 open slots, and so we should be pursuing that.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. And I guess, Keith, I don't know if you're able to talk more about that process, if this is an appropriate time generally, but I do know at least one person who has applied, maybe in the last 4 months or so. I know we had initially been kind of waiting until, you know, the permanent director got put into the position, but it seems that's probably not going to happen. So yeah, I guess if you can speak to just a little about what appointments would look like now, and, you know, or is that still on hold?
That part is not on hold. In fact, I talked to Sharon Ibarra. She's coordinates the boards and commissions system, and she actually wanted to have nominations in earlier than usual. She actually wanted like September, October timeframe. So if you know anybody, you can apply online,
right,
to the boards and commission, and then they'll take it from there.
Okay. Yeah, I think for, I do know one person. I thought the person had put their application in, but I'll email you separately then, and I'll check on that. Roy, did you have any other questions on that?
Yeah, are government workers allowed to be a member?
Offhand, I think they are.
Yes.
We have some employees that serve on not in their area, but another area, in an environmental area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I served while I was a government worker.
Okay.
So yeah, it's possible.
Are there categories we're looking for? I know they were trying to get different backgrounds, and I was wondering what the slots, or what slots are supposed to fill as far as background.
I think for background, well, specifically what our council members have expressed wanting is somebody who has a lot of experience with Native Hawaiian, traditional customary practices and culture. That was something that I think, we had approached a couple people that we possibly had in mind, you know, when Scott was still on, but we, at least one of the people that we had approached, I don't know if they had the time to serve on the council. So for sure, I think we are still looking for somebody that would be willing to serve in that role. Mahina, I don't know if you came across anybody. I think maybe we talked about maybe Malia potentially being on the council. I'm not too sure. That's kind of sticking in my mind as a potential conversation. But other than that, I'm not sure if there are other subject matter areas that we want. I mean, I open it up to this group to certainly make those suggestions.
I thought Sharon used to keep track of which areas she's looking for. I think I was approached because I was an engineer, so they wanted an engineer at that time.
Sorry,
I was approached because they wanted the business sector to be heard
Right.
from.
Yes, I think real estate, they wanted a lawyer, engineer, and so on.
You know, I think it depends on the specific board or commission, and I don't think they're looking for any particular type of individual with certain backgrounds. I know for certain boards and commissions that we kind of oversee, it's been rather difficult to staff to find people to come up to that board and commission, and we've had to actually, you know, renominate individuals who've already served, but there has to be, you know, two-term, right? You all know the two-term limitation, and we've sort of agreed with Sharon that if that individual went out for a certain period of time and can reapply, then it's like a new appointment. But yeah, I'm not aware of any specific kind of background they're looking
Yeah, I remember seeing a list. I can't remember where I saw it. I'm not sure if it was informal or.
There's a list in the statute of generally people within this area, but it's not, you know, there are certain boards and commissions that say you need to have one person with X, one person with Y. Ours doesn't have that. Ours is a lot broader and really covers, you know, more general interests. So internally, though, this group, we've expressed, you know, after going through rulemaking and then talking about potential areas of guidance that we wanted to focus on, that's where, you know, we really wanted somebody who had a lot of experience with Native Hawaiian culture to be in, because, you know, Kaunohi was previously on our council, and that was really the role that she was filling. So again, if there are other areas that this group feels we want to focus on, I think we should communicate that to Keith. So when applications come through, you know, they can kind of keep an eye out on that.
I'd love to have somebody from the UH Law Center, you know, one of the younger people.
Mahina?
Am I too old already? No.
To join you, Mahina, to join you.
No, that would be awesome. Yeah, that would be great. I can put some feelers out there. And I was just gonna say, I echo Onauna's sentiment, and I would love somebody with experience doing cultural impact assessments, especially if we're gonna be taking that on as our next rules committee beast. That would be great. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about, the next bit of the rules, and who do we need? Malia would be fabulous. Have you talked to Malia, Mahina?
I have talked to Malia. She is just beyond slammed, teaching at Hawaiian Studies now, and the law school. So I know she's really, really super busy, and she might have even moved back to Molokai. But I can talk to her again, because she's actually given me some contacts for cultural impact assessment people that she thinks would be great. So yeah, I'll circle back with her.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a good role for her to play.
Yeah, and if those folks that she recommended that do the CIAs, they're willing to apply, I mean, yeah, please send them the link to apply for boards and commissions, because I mean, as everybody here knows, it's not a terribly difficult application, right?
Mhm.
So at least that way they get their application in the door and we can kind of start that process.
Yeah,
Okay, yes,
I guess I
perfect. I'll
was
do that.
looking for somebody with good watershed and invasive species expertise. I
Definitely.
think that's a big area that we need somebody.
Good suggestion. Right. Ron, you had your hand up too?
Yeah, that watershed and invasive species, that's Stephanie's portfolio. We haven't been able to see her much lately, but that's, she can do that.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
a big gap in our committee is somebody from the visitor industry. You know, if we got 3 seats open, we should have, you know, someone who, it's our state's largest economic engine, and they're quite regulated by Chapter 343. And I think we need somebody from that industry.
What about, in that vein, Ron, what about someone from there's that group that they're employees of the visitor of HTA, and it's their responsibility to go into the hotels and make sure all of the employees are culturally correct and with the host culture. And so that might kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They would be a visitor bureau, but they would also have the right cultural. I know there was a guy, his name was George. He worked for Aloha Airlines. He worked there for many years, and then he went to work for Aloha Airlines. I can't think of what they call them, but it's a pretty good sized staff, at least when George was working there. It was 10 or 15 people.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
I think these are all routes that are worthwhile to explore. So definitely reach out to your contact and get them to apply. All right. Anything else on this for now? Okay, folks. Any other just public forum items generally? If not, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Okay, thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you folks on November 10th at 1 o'clock, unless you have a committee meeting. And for the Chapter 91 group, please log out and go ahead and log right back into the other meeting link. We'll talk to you folks soon. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.